Over 1,000 days of brutal war, brutal aggression of Russia against Ukraine, terrible wars in the Middle East, insecurities, uprisals, crises, tensions in Georgia, in Moldova, and now in Romania, and many other places, a tremendous power shift in the United States, and many other crisis spots, current and emerging. Mr. Casale, what is going on?
Well, Xavier, we are going on. We are going on, you and me and everybody watching. Life is going on. Life is continuing. Life is continuing also in Ukraine in these very, very dark hours. And the world is in a very dark place. It's a very dark moment. But we have to have confidence in ourselves as citizens and remember that life, despite all of this, the most terrible, tragic circumstances, can go on, does go on, will go on. And we must take heart from that, and we must also reflect on what we can do in our own lives, in our own families, in our own communities, and as citizens, what responsibility we can take as citizens to make sure that life goes on, that we not only survive as a society and as a world, but that we can thrive and develop and grow again. And so I want to be realistic. I don't say this is an optimistic statement. I think it's a realistic statement. There is always something that we can do, and life goes on. We go on. We must go on. We will go on, and we must do what we can to not be overwhelmed by the darkness, but to be positive and constructive, and to live our lives in the best way we can.
This is an appealing message that you're delivering here. However, political parties of the far right are on the rise, and people want to see their chances with other type of forces in the society, from the far right political parties that are in an apparent coalition with the Russian dictator in the Kremlin. So maybe the people want exactly that, or is it something else going on? Because the rise of the far right in Europe is really very aggressive, very dynamic, very fast, and democracy is in retreat. So what is going on with the society? What really, what do you think the societies and the progressive forces in the society could and should do in defense of democracy and human rights? Or as opposed to the question like, okay, maybe the societies want exactly what is on the rise, to see authoritarian regimes in power, the strong hand as a substitute to human rights and human dignity and freedoms, you know, kind of the bread and games instead of creativity, productivity, and freedom.
Well, you asked the question, what is it that people want? And yes. What is it that you want? What does I want? What is it that everybody wants? We want a better life. We want a better life materially. People are concerned about the cost of living. We want more security, and perhaps most of all, we want our freedom. And I don't think people are stupid. I think they know what they want. And you talk about the rise of the far right. Well, there are very powerful forces at play. And I think that there are emotions involved in politics too, as well as voting for a particular reason. And I think really to find out how to get what you want It's easy sometimes to think that somebody can promise you something, you say, that's what I want, and then, you vote for them, and so that party can win the election. But after that, they actually have to deliver what they've promised. And that's not the same thing as promising it in the first place. And I think that a lot of the far-right parties who have been successful electorally are going to actually struggle to deliver what people want. And maybe nobody can deliver what people want today. And so people will get more and more frustrated and more afraid. And that is an opportunity for the far right to play on those negative emotions. I want to appeal to people to be positive and to think about what they want and to articulate what they want and to say what they want. I mean, you can do opinion polls, but they have their limitations. What I'm in favour of is actually citizens' assemblies and having the opportunity of bringing people together, holding a space where people can come together with different life experiences and bring their own experiences, bring their own fears and their own hopes for the future, and their own ideas about what policies are needed and what could work, and to discuss that together, not necessarily with the aim of all arriving at the same point of view. Nobody has a monopoly of wisdom, but everybody has a point of view and everybody has an experience. And I think in these very challenging times, we need to see that as a resource and to really calm things down if possible and to create a space where people feel that their experience and their point of view and their views are valued and that they're being listened to and they're being heard. And to do this in humility, to do this in a way where citizens feel that they are equal to one another and they don't have a politician telling them what's good for them or looking down at them, or the feeling that a politician is somehow in a privileged position compared to their position, because this creates a lot of resentment and, again, a lot of anger. And that's a negative emotion. And the far right are very skillful at playing on very negative emotions. So we need to find a way of creating some more positive, constructive emotions and actually elevating the citizen. And you have to go about that in the right way. You have to create spaces where we can have a different kind of public conversation, where we're not attacking and criticizing each other all the time, but where we actually try to see some good in other people, even if they're not the same point of view as us. Because I think the problem with just attacking the far right, just attacking the opponents, is you just polarize things even more. And that is very helpful to the far right, to polarize things. They love doing that. They love provoking things and polarizing things because at the end of the day, they think that's a fight they can win. What I'm saying is we need to build the center back up again. We need to have a different kind of public conversation. We need to have more civility, more respect, more humility. And we need to recognize these are very challenging times. And in the end, we must find a solution together as a society and as a community. So I'm asking myself, how can we actually bring people together? How can we hold a space where we can have a conversation, a different quality of public conversation where everybody feels valued, where everyone can bring their experience, their knowledge, and where at least we can find a way forward where people feel that it's taken account of my point of view. Citizens are not stupid and they're also adults, they're grown-ups. They can take no for an answer if they have an explanation. But they want to be heard. They want to be taken seriously. They want to be respected. And I think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of resentment, and that makes it easy for the far right to polarize. And that's really all they need to do to keep stoking that sentiment. Yeah, and so they put forward policies that they don't really believe in, but that are going to help to fuel that negative emotion, because it's that negative emotion that is sustaining them in power. And the challenge they've got, as I said before, once they're in power, is actually to deliver it for people. And they don't really have the policies to deliver, but they talk about things that get people who are feeling in a negative space to vote for them. And somehow, so I think what we need to do is try to create a different quality of public conversation that is less resentful, less fear-filled, and where perhaps other solutions can emerge. And by doing that, to build up the center of politics and to marginalize the extremists rather than playing into the hands of the extremists, which is what's happening at the moment.
Well, as a former MP and an active in the British policy and politics, you probably have a lot of experience and a lot of advice to share with us. But are we really going to win only with a positive, constructive way, with humility, with finding ways to understand each other, and so on? We're talking about very aggressive forces on the other side.
Well, I don't know whether we're going to win that way, but I think it's something that is absolutely necessary. And it's a place to start. And I'm speaking to your audience and to people at home and to people watching this in terms of what we can do as citizens. And I think trying to engage in a more civil debate and take part in elections. If there's an opportunity for you to go to a citizens' assembly, take it seriously. Try to get into different kinds of conversations about the way forward. Avoid the temptation to polarize, to attack at the extreme. Of course, I think there are jobs for the government and the European Union, if you're a member state of the European, and others to do that to regulate the public space and to make it safer. We have to expose disinformation. We have to criminalize hate speech and hate crimes and so on, and meet that with the full force of the law. But I'm trying to address this. I think where all this is coming from is a quality of it's a public debate which is deteriorating in quality. And I think that one factor, it's not enough by itself, I agree with you, but one important factor that I want to emphasize is the need to improve the quality of public debate and to create the spaces. And I think Civil, your organization, is very good at doing that, and I'd like to see more of that, so that we don't end up having conversations all the time with people who agree with us, but we can actually have political discussion and debate across difference that doesn't polarize. And when you mentioned that I was a member of Parliament, I mean, in the United Kingdom, you have a single member constituency. So you have the political debate and the different parties put up their candidates, but then you only have one MP elected for each area. And once you're elected for that area, you represent the whole area. And so I was very proud when somebody might come to me in my area that I represented, and they would say, Mr. Casale, I didn't vote for you, but I think you're doing a good job as my MP. And do you see what I mean? So there's a time when we have to have the debate, the political debate, but there's also a time when we need to come together as a community, because there are things that divide us in society and there are things that unite us. And the things that divide us are dividing us in more and more extreme ways, polarizing ways, violent ways, and we have to calm that down. And we have and where people are breaking the law, we have to make them feel the full force of the law. But what I want to emphasize in this interview is remember that there are things that unite us, and let's elevate those. And what I hope can unite us is the idea that we need to have a civilized debate where I'm not going to say you're a bad person just because you don't agree with me. I'm going to be curious about why you believe what you believe, and I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to engage with you, and I hope that that's the respect and equality and humility that you bring to me. I bring, in all humility, my humility, my respect to you. I don't have to agree with you. I just need to listen to you, understand you, and hope that you will do that in return. And I think we can do more of that. Then that does help to consolidate the center of politics. And it reminds us that actually, in the end, there are values like the rule of law and human rights and democracy that we share, whatever our particular view on a certain issue is. And we need to do much more, I think, to elevate the things that unite us. The things that divide us will always be there, and talk about things that divide us in a different way. We are too focused on all the things that divide us, and that polarizes all the time, leads things to the extreme, and the people who benefit from that most are the far right.
And this all, of course, however valuable is as thoughts and as experience, can be expected in societies, in countries that are still at peace. But we have a brutal war 1,000 kilometers from Skopje, where we are having this conversation, in Ukraine, more precisely, which is at a stage of the war in which some powers in the West believe that this conflict should be frozen, whilst others, especially President Zelensky, believe that the peace, the real peace, is only sustainable if Russia pulls out every single soldier from the sovereign recognized territory of Ukraine. What do you think the West is doing and what it should be doing in order to secure sustainable peace? Because many people, I believe rightfully think that if Ukraine falls, Europe falls. And if Ukraine is freezing the conflict, that will only mean time and space for the regime in the Kremlin to go into new conquests. What do you think should happen?
Yes. Well, first of all, I just want to send a message of hope and solidarity to all the people of Ukraine on my own behalf and also on behalf of the organisation I represent, European People's Forum. We have been working closely with civil society groups in Ukraine since before the Russian invasion and, of course, all the time since. And in fact, one of our directors is Lena Kush. She lives in Kiev and she is the secretary of the National Union of Journalists in Kiev. So we feel very, very close to them. And I just want to say also that I know that means a lot to them. And sometimes I think, well, they're in such a terrible situation with bombs falling on them, and I'm in my comfortable home in Italy where I live. And I feel somehow very humbled by this, and that my contribution is not significant. And what comes back the other way is it means so much to us to know that you're there and you're thinking about us and that solidarity is there. So I do appeal to your audience, don't think that, just one person sitting in safety thinking about Ukraine doesn't make a difference. We must all continue to think about Ukraine and offer our solidarity, because above all that means so much to the people who are in Ukraine at the moment. It really does mean a lot to them. That's what they say to us, and I find that very, very humbling, but very important to share that. And so the West must continue to support Ukraine, and it's not just about Ukraine, it's about the whole international system, and it's certainly about Europe. I don't believe that if Ukraine, I don't believe Ukraine will fall. Ukraine cannot be allowed to fall. You cannot extinguish the desire, the burning desire of a people for freedom. That was never going to fall. That is never going to crumble. So I don't believe that Ukraine, in that sense, will ever fall. And territorially, I hope it will remain whole and integral. And I think we have to do everything we can in the West to ensure that outcome. That is the only just outcome. And it's to have peace, you also need to have justice. You make the hypothetical, what happens if Ukraine falls, will Europe fall? No, I don't think Europe will fall if Ukraine falls, but a certain idea of Europe will fall. And the idea that we have seen in the beautiful dreams of so many people in Ukraine, and their attachment to the values of Europe. You don't have to be a passport holder of a European Union member state to be able to stand up and say, I'm a European. You have to believe in the rule of law, in democracy, in human rights, in freedom, in a better world for you and your neighbors. And I think most Ukrainians do, and I think that's what they are putting their lives on the line for. And again, that's very, very humbling. And I think it needs to remind us Europeans, and I'm a European, how important, how valuable, how existential those values are. And for me, that's what it's about. We want to see a European space that is safe for democracy, that is resilient. And if you don't have a space that's safe for democracy, by the way, that's also not a good place to do business or to develop any human activity. And so that's why I say if Ukraine falls, a certain idea of Europe will fall. But it's the right thing to do to back Ukraine. And ultimately, it's for the Ukrainian people to decide if they need to make a compromise in order to secure peace. That's not for me to comment on. That's got to be for them. You asked me about Western policy. I think we have to back the Ukrainian people as long as they need our support, as much as we can, and stand with them in the face of this. I don't want to demonize people, but something evil has happened. Yeah, let me put it that way, and it has to be brought to an end.